that our flag was still there. Oh,
Stop broadcast. Button.
does that star
Stop broadcast. Stop broad. Camera selection. Back camera. Button. TCP55S/NS449/0Q0 2376 video 381 at 24.4 FPS target 24.0 FPS.
And the home of the brave.
And with that, the debate about to begin. Enjoy yourself.
The road to the White House is long and winding. The twists and turns have captivated America in record numbers. But with a new year comes a new focus. The first contests are within sight. The field of candidates is getting smaller. And with every day, the end of the road gets closer. Tonight, the road leads to South Carolina, home of the first in the South Republican primary, where history has proven that the eventual nominee needs a strong finish. In the low country, American industry is thriving. Unemployment is on the decline. And people are moving here in record numbers. Charleston has also suffered unimaginable tragedy. It has lived the nightmare that has haunted too many American communities.
Just Whale Jack joined.
But its citizens have come together. And they look toward a brighter future. There are just 18 days until the Iowa caucuses. 37 days until the South Carolina primary. Tonight, the election year officially kicks off with the very first debate of 2016.
It is 9 p.m. here at the North Charleston Coliseum at Performing Arts Center in South Carolina. Welcome to the 6th Republican presidential debate of the 2016 campaign here on the Fox Business Network. I'm Neil Cavuto alongside my friend and co-moderator, Maria Bartiromo.
Tonight, we are working with Facebook to ask the candidates the questions voters want answered. And according to Facebook, the U.S. election has dominated the global conversation, with 131 million people talking about the 2016 race. That makes it the #1 issue talked about on Facebook last year worldwide.
Now, the 7 candidates on the stage tonight were selected based on their standing in 6 national polls, as well as polls in the early voting states of Iowa and New Hampshire. Those standings determining the position on the stage of the candidates tonight. And here they are. Businessman Donald Trump. Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Neurosurgeon Ben Carson. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. And Ohio Governor John Kasich.
Tonight's rules are simple. Up to 90 seconds for each answer, 1 minute for each follow-up response. And if a candidate goes over the allotted time, you'll hear this. So let's get started. Candidates. Jobs and growth, 2 of the biggest issues facing the country right now. In his State of the Union address earlier this week, the president said, quote, "We have the strongest, most durable economy in the world. And according to our Facebook research, jobs is one of the biggest issues resonating across the country, including here in South Carolina. The president is touting 14 million new jobs and an unemployment rate cut in half. The president says that anyone who claims America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction. Senator Cruz, what do you
CBS
say
News
if he
notification.
doesn't?
CBS News. Watch Lib. CBS
Well,
analysis of
thank you for
GOP
that
debate in
question.
South Carolina.
I want to say thank you to the state of South Carolina for welcoming us. Let me start. I want to get to the substance of the question on jobs, but I want to start with something. Today, many of us picked up our newspapers, and we were horrified to see the sight of 10 American sailors on their knees with their hands on their head. In that State of the Union, President Obama didn't so much as mention the 10 sailors that had been captured by Iran. President Obama is preparing to send $100 billion or more to the Ayatollah Khamenei. And I'll tell you, it was heartbreaking. But the good news is the next commander-in-chief is standing on this stage. And I give you my word, if I am elected president, no serviceman or servicewoman will be forced to be on their knees, and any nation that captures our fighting men and women will feel the full force and fury of the United States of America. Now on to your substantive question. The president tried to paint a rosy picture of jobs. And you know, he's right. If you're a Washington lobbyist, if you make your money in and around Washington, things are doing great. The millionaires and billionaires are doing great under Obama, but we have the lowest percentage of Americans working today of any year since 1977. Median wages have stagnated, and the Obama-Clinton economy has left behind the working men and women of this country. The reason all of us are here is we believe we should be fighting for the working men and women of this country and not Washington, D.C.
Thank you, sir.
Governor Kasich, we are not even 2 weeks into this stock trading year, but think about it, investors have already lost $1.6 trillion in market value. That makes it the worst start to a new year ever. Many worry that things could get even worse and that banks and financial stocks are particularly vulnerable. And if this escalates like it did back when Barack Obama first assumed the presidency, what actions would you take if the same thing happens all over again, just as, in this example, you are taking over the presidency?
Well, look, it takes three things basically to grow jobs, and I've done it when I was in Washington when we had a balanced budget, had 4 years of balanced budgets, paid down $500 billion of debt, and our economy was growing like crazy. It's the same thing that I did in Ohio. It's a simple formula. Common sense regulations, which is why I think we should freeze all federal regulations for 1 year, except for health and safety. It requires tax cuts, because that sends a message to the job creators that things are headed the right way. And if you cut taxes for corporations and you cut taxes for individuals, you're going to make things move, particularly the corporate tax, which is the highest, of course, in the world. But in addition to that, we have to have fiscal discipline. We have to show that we can march to a balanced budget. And when you do that, when you're in a position of managing regulations, when you reduce taxes, and when you have fiscal discipline, you see the job creators begin to get very comfortable with the fact that they can invest. Right now, you have taxes that are too high. You have regulations. I mean, come on, they're affecting everybody here, particularly our small businesses. They're in a position where they're smothering people. And I mean, are you kidding me? We're nowhere close to a balanced budget or fiscal discipline. Those three things put together are going to give confidence to job creators, and you will begin to see wages rise. You will begin to see jobs created in a robust economy. And how do I know it? Because I've done it. I did it as the chairman of the Budget Committee working with Senator Domenici, and I've done it in the state of Ohio as the chief executive. Our wages are growing faster than the national average. We're running surpluses, and we can take that message and that formula to Washington to lift every single American to a better life.
We know that recent global events have many people worried. Iran detaining American sailors, forcing them to apologize, North Korea and its nuclear ambitions, an aggressive China, and a Middle East that continues to deteriorate. Not to mention, ISIS is getting stronger. Governor Christie, sometimes it seems the world is on fire. Where and when should a president use military action to restore order?
Well, Maria, I'm glad to have heard from you in the summary of that question about what's going on in the world, because on Tuesday night I watched Story Time with Barack Obama, and I got to tell you, it sounded like everything in the world was going amazing, you know? The fact is, there's a number of things that the next president's going to have to do to clean up this mess. The first thing is we have to strengthen our alliances around the world. And the best way to do that is to start talking to our allies again and having them be able to count on our word. Lots of people will say lots of different things about me in this campaign and others. But the one thing they've never said about me is that I'm misunderstood. And so when we talk to our allies and we give them our word in a Christie administration, they'll know we're going to keep it. Next, we have to talk to our adversaries. And we have to make sure they understand the limits of our patience. And this president, given what Ted said right at the beginning, is absolutely right. It's absolutely disgraceful that Secretary Kerry and others said in their response to what's going on in Iran that this was a good thing. It showed how the relationship was getting better. The president doesn't understand, and by the way, neither does Secretary Clinton, and here's my warning to everybody out in the audience tonight. If you're worried about the world being on fire, you're worried about how we're going to use our military, you're worried about strengthening our military, and you're worried most of all about keeping your homes and your families safe and secure, you cannot give Hillary Clinton a third term of Barack Obama's leadership. I will not do that. If I'm the nominee, she won't get within 10 miles of the White House.
Just to be clear, Governor, where and when would you use military action?
Military action, Maria, would be used when it was absolutely necessary to protect American lives and protect American interests around the world. We are not the world's policemen, but we need to stand up and be ready. And the problem, Maria, is that the military is not ready either. We need to rebuild our military, and this president has let it diminish to a point where tin pot dictators like the mullahs in Iran are taking our Navy ships. It is disgraceful, and in the Christie administration, they would know much, much better than to do that.
Governor Bush, the president just told the nation 2 nights ago that America's back, and that the idea that our enemies are getting stronger or that this country is getting weaker, well, it's just rhetoric and hot air. Now the Democrats go even further, sort of saying Republicans even suggesting such comments actually embolden our enemies. I guess they would include you. What do you say?
Well, first of all, the idea that somehow we're better off today than the day that Barack Obama was inaugurated President of the United States is totally an alternative universe. The simple fact is that the world has been torn asunder. Think about it. With grandiose language, the president talks about red lines and nothing to follow it up, talks about ISIS being the JV team. They form a caliphate the size of Indiana with 35 to 40,000 battle-tested terrorists. He's missing the whole point that America's leadership in the world is required for peace and stability. In the crowd today is Major General James Livingston, who's the co-chairman of my campaign here in South Carolina, a Medal of Honor recipient. I've learned from him that what we need to achieve is peace through strength, which means we need to rebuild the military. In this administration, every weapon system has been gutted. In this administration, the force levels are going down to a level where we can't even project force. Our friends no longer think we have their back, and our enemies no longer fear us, and we're in a much different position than we should be. And for the life of me, I have no understanding why the president thinks that everything is going well. Terrorism is on the run. China, Russia is advancing their agenda at warp speed, and we pull back. As President of the United States, I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. We will rebuild the military to make sure that it is a solid force, not to be the world's policeman, but to make sure that in a peaceful world, people know that the United States is there to take care of our own national interests and take care of our allies.
So I take it from that you do not agree with the president.
No, and worse yet, to be honest with you, Hillary Clinton would be a national security disaster. Think about it. She wants to continue down the path of Iran, Benghazi, the Russian reset, Dodd-Frank, all the things that have gone wrong in this country. She would be a national security mess, and that is wrong. And you know what? Here's the problem. If she gets elected, she's under investigation with the FBI right now. If she gets elected, her first 100 days, instead of setting an agenda, she might be going back and forth between the White House and the courthouse. We need to stop that.
Senator Rubio, the president says that ISIS doesn't threaten our national existence like Germany or Japan did back in World War II, that the terror group is nothing more than twisted souls plotting attacks in their garages. But the House Homeland Security Committee recently said that over 1,000 ongoing investigations of homegrown extremism in 50 states. So how do you define the threat?
Well,
like Germany then, or dangerous nutcases now?
Yeah, I would go, first of all, one step further in this description of Hillary Clinton. She wouldn't just be a disaster. Hillary Clinton is disqualified from being Commander-in-Chief of the United States. Someone who cannot handle intelligence information appropriately cannot be Commander-in-Chief, and someone who lies to the families of those 4 victims in Benghazi can never be President of the United States. On the issue of Barack Obama does not believe that America is a great global power. Barack Obama believes that America is an arrogant global power that needs to be cut down to size. And that's how you get a foreign policy where we cut deals with our enemies like Iran, and we betray our allies like Israel, and we gut our military, and we go around the world like he has done on 10 separate occasions and apologized for America. He doesn't understand the threat in ISIS. He consistently underestimates it, but I do not. There is a war against ISIS, not just against ISIS, but against radical jihadist terrorists, and it is a war that either they win or we win. When I'm President of the United States, we are going to win this war on ISIS. The most powerful intelligence agency in the world is going to tell us where they are. The most powerful military in the world is going to destroy them. And if we capture any of them alive, they are getting a one-way ticket to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and we are going to find out everything they know.
Thank you, Senator.
Dr. Carson, the president says he does not want to treat ISIS as a foreign army. But ISIS is neither a country nor a government. How do you attack a network that does not respect national borders?
Well, I'm very happy to get a question this early on. I was going to ask you to wake me up when the time came. I find it really quite fascinating, some of the president's proclamations. The fact of the matter is, he doesn't realize that we now live in the 21st century, and that war is very different than it used to be before. Not armies massively marching on each other and air forces, but now we have dirty bombs, and we have cyber attacks, and we have people who will be attacking our electrical grid. And, we have a whole variety of things that they can do, and they can do these things simultaneously. And we have enemies who are obtaining nuclear weapons that they can explode in our exo-atmosphere and destroy our electric grid. I mean, just think about a scenario like that. They explode the bomb. We have an electromagnetic pulse. They hit us with a cyber attack simultaneously, and dirty bombs. Can you imagine the chaos that would ensue at that point? He needs to recognize that those kinds of things are, in fact, an existential threat to us. But here's the real key. We have the world's best military, even though he's done everything he can to diminish it. And the fact of the matter is, if we give them a mission and we don't tie their hands behind their back, they can get it accomplished.
Mr. Trump, at the State of the Union, the president pointed to a guest who was a Syrian refugee, you might recall, whose wife and daughter and other family members were killed in an air attack. Now, he fled that country seeking asylum here, ultimately ended up in Detroit, where he's now trying to start a new life. The president says that that doctor is the real face of these refugees and not the one that you and some of your colleagues on this stage are painting. That you prefer the face of fear and terror, and that you would refuse to let in anyone into this country seeking legitimate asylum. How do you answer that?
It's not fear and terror, it's reality. You just have to look today at Indonesia, bombings all over. You look at California, you look frankly at Paris, where there's the strictest no gun policy of any city anywhere in the world. And you see what happens, 130 people dead with many to follow. They're very, very badly wounded. They will, some will follow. And you look around and you see what's happening. And this is not the case. When he introduced the doctor, very nice, everything perfect, but that's not representative of what you have in that line of migration. That could be the great Trojan horse. It could be people that are going to do great, great destruction. When I look at the migration, I looked at the line. I said it actually on your show recently. Where are the women? There look like very few women, very few children, strong, powerful men, young, and people are looking at that and they're saying, what's going on? You look at the kind of damage that two people that got married, they were radicalized, they got married, they killed 15 people, and actually 14, going to be probably 16. But you look at that and you take a look, a good strong look, and that's what we have. We owe $19 trillion. Our country's a mess, and we can't let all these people come into our countries and break our borders. We can't do it.
Senator Cruz.
_+0_. Can you tilt the camera down a little?
To properly disclose $1 million in loans from Goldman Sachs and Citibank during your Senate race. Your campaign says it was inadvertent. $1 million is inadvertent.
Well, Maria, thank you for passing on that hit piece on the front page of the New York Times. You know, the nice thing about the mainstream media, they don't hide their views. The New York Times a few weeks back had a columnist who wrote a column saying anybody but Cruz. Had that same columnist wrote a column comparing me to an evil demonic spirit from the movie It Follows that jumps apparently from body to body possessing people. So, you know, the New York Times and I don't exactly have the warmest of relationships. Now, in terms of their really stunning hit piece, what they mentioned is when I was running for Senate, unlike Hillary Clinton, I don't have masses of money in the bank, hundreds of millions of dollars. When I was running for Senate, just about every lobbyist, just about all of the establishment opposed me in the Senate race in Texas. And my opponent in that race was worth over $200 million. He put a $25 million check up from his own pocket to fund that campaign. And my wife Heidi and I, we ended up investing everything we own. We took a loan against our assets to invest it in that campaign to defend ourselves against those attacks. And the entire New York Times attack is that I disclosed that loan on one filing with the United States Senate that was a public filing, but it was not on a second filing with the FEC. Both of those filings were public, and yes, I made a paperwork error disclosing it on one piece of paper instead of the other, but if that's the best hit the New York Times has got, they better go back to the well.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, we are just getting started here in South Carolina, and there is a lot to get to, including things like gun rights, the national debt, and the sometimes nasty war words between, well, a couple of these fellows up here. More to this.
Best defense is defense. Use everything you have to protect your lives. So, send a dozen choppers when one chopper would do. Build walls twice as high as you need. Join me and strike. Mobile Strike. Download and play now. Free from the App Store.
I will walk away from this fight if I just surrender. Beg forgiveness from the thing that took my woman from me. No. This war isn't nearly over. I will lay claim to what I am owed.
In the summertime, when the weather is fine, you can stretch right up and touch the sky. When it's vacation time, you got endless cruises on your mind. Have a drink, relax, you're gonna have a good time. Sail along with us at
MSC Cruises is the largest privately owned cruise line in the world, with 12 ultra-modern ships sailing to over 150 destinations worldwide. And now, for a limited time, cruise the Caribbean on MSC Cruises and save a lot with our exclusive 2-for-1 offer. Book a balcony stateroom and your guest sails for free. That's 2 for the price of 1, an incredible value. This money-saving 2-for-1 offer won't last. Book your Caribbean vacation now and journey to one exotic tropical island paradise after another. Call your travel agent or visit msccruises.com.
We're always happy, lives we live in, yeah, that's our philosophy.
GOP debate fallout. Who scored big points with voters? Candidate Jeb Bush and the Factor's Bill O'Reilly. Tomorrow, only on Mornings with Maria.
Mesothelioma victim. 3 questions for the U.S. Senate. Congress just voted to label genetically engineered salmon. Why not other foods? GMO crops are doused with heavy doses of a herbicide the World Health Organization says probably causes cancer. Isn't that reason enough to label? 64 other countries label GMOs. Why don't American shoppers have the same information? Tell your senator, high-tech gimmicks like QR codes aren't the answer. We need clear on-package labeling.
Consumers deserve a uniform standard for labeling food. As Congress stalls, harmful state laws are being passed that threaten family farms, increase food prices by $500 per family, and hurt Americans already struggling to afford food. It's time for Congress to act, to find a national solution that keeps our farmers growing and food prices lower for working families. Because if Congress does nothing, farmers and families will pay the price.
All right, welcome back to the Republican presidential debate right here in North Charleston, South Carolina. Let's get right back to the questions, and I'll start with you, Senator Cruz. Now, you are, of course, a strict constitutionalist, no one would doubt that. And as you know, the U.S. Constitution says only natural-born citizens are eligible for the office of President of the United States. Stop me if you've heard this before. Now, you were born in Canada to an American mother, so you were and are considered an American citizen. But that fellow next to you, Donald Trump, and others, have said that being born in Canada means you are not natural born, and that has raised questions about your eligibility. Do you want to try to close this topic once and for all tonight?
Well, Neil, I'm glad we are focusing on the important topics of the evening. You know, back in September, my friend Donald said that he had his lawyers look at this from every which way. And there was no issue there. There was nothing to this birther issue. Now, since September, the Constitution hasn't changed. But the poll numbers have. And I recognize that Donald is dismayed that his poll numbers are falling in Iowa. But the facts and the law here are really quite clear. Under long-standing U.S. law, the child of a U.S. citizen born abroad is a natural-born citizen. If a soldier has a child abroad, that child is a natural-born citizen. That's why John McCain, even though he was born in Panama, was eligible to run for president. If an American missionary has a child abroad, that child is a natural-born citizen. That's why George Romney, Mitt's dad, was eligible to run for president, even though he was born in Mexico. At the end of the day, the legal issue is quite straightforward, but I would note that the birther theories that Donald has been relying on, some of the more extreme ones insist that you must not only be born on U.S. soil, but have 2 parents born on U.S. soil. Under that theory, not only would I be disqualified, Marco Rubio would be disqualified, Bobby Jindal would be disqualified, and interestingly enough, Donald J. Trump would be disqualified. Because Donald's mother was born in Scotland, she was naturalized. Now, Donald,
but I was born here.
On the issue of citizenship, Donald,
big difference.
On the issue of citizenship, Donald, I'm not going to use your mother's birth against you.
Because it wouldn't work.
You're an American, as is everybody else on this stage, and I would suggest we focus on who's best prepared to be commander-in-chief, because that's the most important question facing the country.
Mr. Trump, did he address that? Did you raise this because of his rising holdup?
Well, let me just tell you something, and you know because you just saw the numbers yourself. NBC Wall Street Journal just came out with a poll. Headline, Trump way up, Cruz going down. I mean, so you can't, they don't like the Wall Street Journal, they don't like NBC, but I like the poll. And frankly, it just came out. And in Iowa now, as you know, Ted, in the last 3 polls, I'm beating you. So, you shouldn't misrepresent how well you're doing with the polls. You don't have to say that. In fact, I was all for you until you said that's a misrepresentation. Number one, this isn't me saying it. I don't care. I think I'm going to win fair and square, and I have to win this way. Thank you. Lawrence Tribe and numerous from Harvard, said that there is a serious question as to whether or not Ted can do this, okay? There are other attorneys that feel, and very, very fine constitutional attorneys, that feel that because he was not born on the land, he cannot run for office. Here's the problem. We're running. He does great. I win. I choose him as my vice presidential candidate, and the Democrats sue because we can't take him along for the ride. I don't like that, okay? The fact is, and if for some reason he beats the rest of the field, and for some, see, they don't like that. They don't like that. No, they don't like that he beats the rest of the field because they want me. But if for some reason, Neil, he beats the rest of the field, I already know the Democrats are going to be bringing a suit. You have a big lawsuit over your head while you're running, and if you become the nominee, who the hell knows if you can even serve in office? So you should go out, get a declaratory judgment, let the courts decide, and you shouldn't have mentioned the polls because I would have been much different.
Why now? Why are you raising this issue now?
Because now he's doing a little bit better. No, I didn't care before. It's true. No, it's true. Hey, look, he never had a chance. Now he's doing better. He's got probably a 4 or 5% chance.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Nail it.
The fact is, there's a big overhang. There's a big question mark on your head. And you can't do that to the party. You really can't. You can't do that to the party. You have to have certainty. Even if it was a 1% chance, and it's far greater than 1%, because he wasn't born. I mean, you have great constitutional lawyers that say you can't run. If there was and you know, I'm not bringing a suit, I promise. But the Democrats are going to bring a lawsuit. And you have to have certainty. You can't have a question. I can agree with you or not, but you can't have a question over your head.
Senator, you want to respond?
Well, listen, I've spent my entire life defending the Constitution before the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to be taking legal advice from Donald Trump.
You don't have to. Take it from Lawrence.
What I'll tell you also...
Take it from your professor.
What I will
Take
tell
it from
you
your
also
own professor.
is the chances of any litigation proceeding and succeeding on this are zero. Now, Mr. Trump is very focused on Larry Tribe. Let me tell you who Larry Tribe is. He's a left-wing judicial activist, Harvard law professor, who was Al Gore's lawyer in Bush versus Gore. He's a major Hillary Clinton supporter, and there's a reason why Hillary's supporters are echoing Donald's attacks on me.
He is not the only one.
Wants to face Donald Trump in the general election.
There are many lawyers.
And I'll tell you what, Donald, you very kindly just a moment ago offered me the VP slot. I'll tell you what. If this all works out, I'm happy to consider naming you as VP. And so if you happen to be right, you could get the top job at the end of the day.
No, I think if it doesn't... I like that. I like it. I'd consider it. But I think I'll go back to building buildings if it doesn't work out.
Actually, I'd love to get you to build a wall.
I have a feeling it's going to work out, actually.
I
can tell you this.
Let me because I was invoked in that question. So let me just say in that answer. Let me say the real question here. I hate to interrupt this episode of Court TV, but the real. I think we have to get back to what this election has to be about. Okay, this is the greatest country in the history of mankind. But in 2008, we elected a president that didn't want to fix America. He wants to change America. We elected a president that doesn't believe in the Constitution. He undermines it. We elected a president that's weakening America on the global stage. We elected a president that doesn't believe in the free enterprise system. This election has to be about reversing all of that damage. That's why I'm running for office, because when I become president of the United States, on my first day in office, we are going to repeal every single one of his unconstitutional executive orders. When I'm president of the United States, we are getting rid of Obamacare, and we are rebuilding our military. And when I'm president, we're not just going to have a president that gives a State of the Union and says, America's the greatest country in the world. When I'm president, we're going to have a president that acts like it.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Trump, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, in her response to the State of the Union address, appeared to choose sides within the party, saying Republicans should resist, quote, the siren call of the angriest voices. She confirmed she was referring to you, among others. Was she out of line? And how would a President Trump unite the party?
Okay. First of all, Nikki this afternoon said I'm a friend of hers, actually a close friend, and wherever you're sitting, Nikki, I am a friend. We're friends. That's good. But she did say there was anger. And I could say, oh, I'm not angry. I'm very angry because our country is being run horribly. And I will gladly accept the mantle of anger. Our military is a disaster. Our health care is a horror show. Obamacare, we're going to repeal it and replace it. We have no borders. Our vets are being treated horribly. Illegal immigration is beyond belief. Our country is being run by incompetent people. And yes, I am angry. And I won't be angry when we fix it. But until we fix it, I'm very, very angry. And I say that to Nikki. So when Nikki said that, I wasn't offended. She said the truth. One of your colleagues interviewed me and said, well, she said you were angry. And I said to myself, she's right. I'm not fighting that. I didn't find it offensive at all. I'm angry because our country is a mess.
Look, I'm sorry, just with time constraints. You and Governor Christie have been exchanging some fairly nasty words of late, and I will allow the governor to respond as well. The governor went so far as to say, you won't be able to slime your way to the White House. He's referring to a series of ads done by a PAC, speak on your behalf, that say, quote, one high-tax, Common Core, liberal, energy-loving, Obamacare, Medicaid expanding president is enough. You think you went too far on that, and do you want to apologize to the governor?
You know, as I said already twice in this debate, we have a very serious problem in this country. We have a president of the United States that is undermining this country's security and expanding the role of our government. Well, I'm going to answer your question, Neil. This president is undermining the constitutional basis of this government. This president is undermining our military. He's undermining our standing in the world. I like Chris Christie, but we cannot afford to have a president of the United States that supports Common Core. We cannot afford to have a president of the United States that supports gun control. This president is more interested in less interested in funding the military than he is in funding he's more interested in funding Planned Parenthood than he is in funding the military. Chris Christie wrote a check to Planned Parenthood. All I'm saying is our next president has to be someone that undoes the damage Barack Obama has done to this country. It cannot be someone that agrees with his agenda, because the damage he has done to America is extraordinary. Let me tell you, if we don't get this election right, there may be no turning back for America. We are on the verge of being the first generation of Americans that leave our children worse off than ourselves. And so I just truly, with all my heart, believe, I, like everybody on the stage, no one is a socialist, no one here is under FBI investigation, so we are a good group of people.
Is he
our next president,
is he a liberal?
Unfortunately, Governor Christie has endorsed many of the ideas that Barack Obama supports, whether it's Common Core or gun control or the appointment of Sonia Sotomayor or the donation he made to Planned Parenthood. Our next president and our Republican nominee cannot be someone who supports those positions.
Governor?
You know, I stood on the stage and watched Marco and rather indignantly look at Governor Bush and say, someone told you that because we're running for the same office, that criticizing me will get you to that office. It appears that the same someone's been whispering in old Marco's ear, too. And so the indignation that you carry on some of this stuff, you have to also own then. So let's set the facts straight. First of all, I didn't support Sonia Sotomayor. Secondly, I never wrote a check to Planned Parenthood. Third, if you look at my record as governor of New Jersey, I have vetoed a 50 caliber rifle ban. I have vetoed a reduction in clip size. I have vetoed a statewide ID system for gun owners. And I have pardoned six out-of-state folks who came through our state and were arrested for owning a gun legally in another state, so they never had to face charges. And on Common Core has been eliminated in New Jersey. So listen, this is the difference between being a governor and being a senator. See, when you're a senator, what you get to do is just talk and talk and talk, and you talk so much that nobody can ever keep up with what you're saying is accurate or not. When you're a governor, you're held accountable for everything you do. And the people of New Jersey have seen it. And the last piece is this. I like Marco too. And 2 years ago, he called me a conservative reformer that New Jersey needed. That was before he was running against me. Now that he is, he's changed his tune. I'm never going to change my tune. I like Marco Rubio. He's a good guy, a smart guy, and he would be a heck of a lot better president than Hillary Rodham Clinton would ever be.
Neil, my name was mentioned here. Neil, my name was mentioned as well. Here's the deal. Chris is totally right. He's been a good governor. And he's a heck of a lot better than his predecessor that would have bankrupted New Jersey. Everybody on this stage is better than Hillary Clinton. And I think the focus ought to be on making sure that we leave this nomination process as wild and woolly as it's going to be. This is not beanbag. These attack ads are going to be part of life. Everybody just needs to get used to it. Everybody's record's going to be scrutinized. And at the end of the day, we need to unite behind the winner so that we can defeat Hillary Clinton, because she is a disaster. Our country can rise up again, but we need to have a compelling conservative agenda that we present to the American people in a way that doesn't disparage people, that unites us around our common purpose. And so everybody needs to discount some of the things you're going to hear in these ads and discount the back and forth here, because every person here is better than Hillary Clinton.
Neil, I was mentioned too.
You were?
Yeah, I said everybody.
Oh.
And I just want to take this opportunity to say, in the 2012 election, we, and when I say we, Republicans tore themselves apart. We have to stop this because, if we manage to damage ourselves and we lose the next election and a progressive gets in there and they get 2 or 3 Supreme Court picks, this nation is over as we know it. And we got to look at the big picture here.
Governor Kasich, Hillary Clinton is getting some serious competition from Senator Bernie Sanders. He's now at 41% in the latest CBS New York Times poll. Vice President Biden sang his praises, saying Bernie is speaking to a yearning that is deep and real, and he has credibility on it. So what does it say about our country that a candidate who is a self-avowed socialist and who doesn't think a 90% tax rate is too high could be the Democratic nominee?
Well, if that's the case, we're going to win every state. If Bernie Sanders is the nominee, that's not even an issue. But look, and I know Bernie, and I can promise you he's not going to be president of the United States. So here's the situation, I think, Maria. And this is what we have to, I've got to tell you, when wages don't rise, and they haven't for a lot of families for a number of years, it's very, very difficult for them. Part of the reason why it hasn't risen is because sometimes we're not giving people the skills they need. Sometimes it's because the Federal Reserve kept interest rates so low that the wealthy were able to invest in strong assets like the stock market when everybody else was left behind. People are upset about it. I'll tell you what else they're upset about. You're 50, you're 51 years old, and some kid walks in and tells you you're out of work, and you don't know where to go and where to turn. Do we have an answer for that? We do. There are ways to retrain the 50 and 51-year-olds because they've got great value. I'll tell you what else people are concerned about. Their kids come out of college, they have high debt, and they can't get a good job. We got to do a lot about the high cost of higher education, but we've got to make sure we're training people for jobs that exist, that are good jobs that can pay. Let me tell you that in this country, people are concerned about their economic future. They're very concerned about it. and they wonder whether somebody is getting something to keeping them from getting it. That's not the America that I've ever known. My father used to say, Johnny, we don't hate the rich. We just want to be the rich. And we just got to make sure that every American has the tools in K through 12 and in vocational education and higher education. And we got to fight like crazy so people can think the American dream still exists, because it does, with rising wages, with full employment, and with everybody in America, and I mean everybody in America, having an opportunity to realize the American dream of having a better life than their mother and their father. I'm president. Look, I've done it once. I've done it once in Washington with great jobs and lower taxes. The economy was really booming. And now in Ohio with the same formula, wages higher than the national average, a growth of 385,000 jobs. It's not that hard. Just know where you want to go, stick to your guts, get it done, because our children and grandchildren are counting on us to get it done. And folks, we will. You count on it.
Dr. Carson, one of the other candidates on this stage has brought up Bill Clinton's past indiscretions. Is that a legitimate topic in this election? And what do you think of the notion that Hillary Clinton is an enabler of sexual misconduct?
Well, there's no question that we should be able to look at any past president, whether they're married to somebody who's running for president or not, in terms of their past behavior and what it means. But, you know, here's the real issue. Is this America anymore? Do we still have standards? Do we still have values and principles? You know, you look at what's going on, you see all the divisiveness and the hatred that goes on in our society. You know, we have a war on virtually everything: race wars, gender wars, income wars, religious wars, age wars. Every war you can imagine, we have people at each other's throats. And our strength is actually in our unity. You know, you go to the internet, you start reading an article, and you go to the comment section. You cannot go 5 comments down before people are calling each other all manner of names. Where did that spirit come from in America? It did not come from our Judeo-Christian roots, I can tell you that. And wherever it came from, we need to start once again
Twitter notification.
recognizing
Twitter.
that there
At
is
Liberal
such a
Sub
thing
76.
as
RT
right
at Hirsch
and
Square.
wrong.
Obama, also known as
And
Top level,
let's
instructs John
not
Kerry
the
to take Iran for free and 10 American sailors out.
drive
Y/X
that
Explorer
out of us. The
PU.
majority of people in America
HTTPS//T.
actually
Go
have
slash
values
J7
and
Ruby Q9
principles,
Raw.
and they believe in the very things that made America great. They've been beaten into submission. It's time for us to stand up for what we believe in.
All right, we are not done. Coming up, one of the top issues people are talking about on Facebook, guns. And you can join us live on this stage in the conversation during this commercial break right from home. You can go to facebook.com/FoxBusiness. We will be streaming live and talking about how we think the debate is going so far. We're back in a moment from Charleston, South Carolina.
Anyone who can get out right now. Do not look up. Do not make eye contact. Just go. Lee, stay calm. I'm right here.
We are live in 5 minutes.
You have the revisions for the opening.
We're still making some changes.
Am I going to get the changes before the show or
You
after
know
the
the
show?
drill. You just point the camera my direction. We'll figure it out together.
It always sounds so simple and yet so moronic.
Here he is, the Wizard of Wall Street himself. The name is Lee Gates. The show is Money Monster. Without risk, there is no reward. Should I sell? Should I unload? Man up!
Who's that guy on camera 2?
You want to complain about it? Go ahead.
Who is it? Anybody know?
Was it a union thing?
Cut the feed.
Whoever's in there, turn the cameras on. Turn the cameras on, Patty. Turn them on,
What are we
Patty.
doing?
Turn them on.
Put it up.
Take it out. Put it on. How do I know it won't blow up? Because I have the detonator. My thumb comes off this trigger, and we all explode. I might be the one with the gun here, but I'm not the real criminal. It's people like these guys. I got my finger on the trigger. I'm telling you, it's rigged. The whole damn thing. But I don't know the truth. They're stealing everything from us, and they're getting away with it, too. How's that even fair?
Just keep talking to him. All right, you're good at that.
Got my finger on the trigger.
You lost a lot of money when the market tanked.
They tracked down his girlfriend. That was everything we had, every last cent. What are you doing?
Just trying to survive.
I'll get you some answers.
Nobody was asking any questions before. These guys could expose everything.
We both want an explanation for what went wrong.
We don't know. You have to understand how delicate of a situation this is.
I'm sitting 80 feet from a bomb. Don't talk to me about delicate situations.
We're human beings. We're not computers. We have a conscience.
I'm trying to save him. You're trying to shoot him.
I want an explanation.
Follow the money. Find the fraud. We're in this together now. Don't turn your back on anybody. I don't want you to die. Oh, my God. No! You came here to get some answers. You deserve to get some answers.
The Commission finds no national interest in continuing to import lesser skilled and unskilled workers to compete in the most vulnerable parts of our labor force. Many American workers do not have adequate job prospects. We should make their task easier to find employment, not harder.
Paid for by Numbers USA.
Welcome back to the Republican presidential debate right here in North Charleston. Let's get right back to the questions. Governor Bush, gun rights, one of the top issues seen on Facebook, with close to 3 million people talking about it in the past month. Right here in Charleston, Dylan Roof, who's been accused of killing 9 people in a nearby church, reportedly had not passed his background check when he got his gun. What is the harm in tightening standards for not only who buys guns, but those who sell them?
First of all, I'd like to recognize Governor Haley for her incredible leadership in the aftermath of the Emmanuel AME Church killings. I also want to recognize the people in that church that showed the grace of God and the grace of forgiveness and the mercy that they showed. I don't know if any of us could have done what they did one after another within 48 hours of that tragedy taking place. Look, here's the deal. In this particular case, the FBI made a mistake. The law itself requires a background check, but they didn't fulfill their part of the bargain within the time that they were supposed to do. We don't need to add new rules. We need to make sure the FBI does its job, because that person should not have gotten a gun. It would not have passed the background check. The first impulse of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton is to take rights away from law-abiding citizens. That's always what they do, whether it's the San Bernardino terrorist attack or if it's these tragedies that take place. I think we ought to focus on what the bigger issue is. It isn't law-abiding gun owners. Look, I have an A+ rating in the NRA, and we also have a reduction in gun violence because in Florida, if you commit a crime with a gun, you're going away. You're going away for a long, long while. And that's what we should focus on, is the violence in our communities. Target the efforts for people that are committing crimes with guns. And if you do that and get it right, you're going to be much better off than creating a political argument where there's a big divide. The other issue is mental health. That's a serious issue that we could work on. Republicans and Democrats alike believe this. The president's first impulse is to do this by executive order, power he doesn't have. Why not go to Congress and in a bipartisan way begin to deal with the process of mental health issues so that people that are spiraling out of control because of mental health challenges don't have access to guns?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Trump, are there any circumstances that you think we should be limiting gun sales of any kind in America?
No. I am a Second Amendment person. If we had guns in California on the other side, where the bullets went in the different direction, you wouldn't have 14 or 15 people dead right now. If even in Paris, if they had guns on the other side going in the opposite direction, you wouldn't have 130 people plus dead. So the answer is no. And what Jeb said is absolutely correct. We have a huge mental health problem in this country. We're closing hospitals, we're closing wards, we're closing so many because the states want to save money. We have to get back into looking at what's causing. You know, the guns don't pull the trigger. It's the people that pull the trigger. And we have to find out what is going on. We have to protect our Second Amendment, and you cannot do this, and certainly what Barack Obama was doing with the executive order. He doesn't want to get people together. You know, the old-fashioned way where you get Congress. You get the Congress, you get the Senate, you get together, you do legislation. He just writes out an order, executive order. Not supposed to happen that way.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Rubio, you said that President Obama wants to take people's guns away, yet under his presidency, gun sales have more than doubled. That doesn't sound like a White House unfriendly to gun owners.
That sounds like people afraid the president's going to take the guns away.
Of course.
Look, the Second Amendment is not an option. It is not a suggestion. It is a constitutional right of every American to be able to protect themselves and their families. I am convinced that if this president could confiscate every gun in America, he would. I am convinced that this president, if he could get rid of the Second Amendment, he would. I am convinced because I see how he works with his attorney general, not to defend the Second Amendment, but to figure out ways to undermine it. I have seen him appoint people to our courts, not to defend the Second Amendment, but to figure out ways to undermine it. Here's my second problem. None of these instances that the president points to as the reason why he's doing these things would have been prevented. You know why? Because criminals don't buy their guns from a gun show. They don't buy their guns from a collector. And they don't buy their guns from a gun store. They steal them, they get them on the black market. And let me tell you, ISIS and terrorists do not get their guns from a gun show. His answer, you name it, if there is an act of violence in America, his immediate answer before he even knows the facts is gun control. Here's a fact. We are in a war against ISIS. They are trying to attack us here in America. They attacked us in Philadelphia last week. They attacked us in San Bernardino 2 weeks ago. And the last line standing between them and our families might be us and a gun. When I'm president of the United States, we are defending the Second Amendment, not undermining it the way Barack Obama does.
But what fact can you point to, Senator? What fact can you point to that the president would take away everyone's gun? You don't think that's extreme?
About every 2 weeks he holds a press conference talking about how he can't wait to restrict people's access to guns. He has never defended. Look, I'll give you a fact. Well, let me tell you this. Do you remember when he ran for president of the United States and he was a candidate and he went and said, these Americans with traditional values, they are bitter people and they cling to their guns and to their religion. That tells you right away where he was headed on all of this. This president, every chance he has ever gotten, has tried to undermine the Second Amendment. He doesn't meet. Here's the difference. When he meets with the Attorney General in the White House, it's not, how can we protect the Second Amendment rights of Americans? It's, give me options on how I can make it harder for law-abiding people to buy guns. That will never happen when I am president of the United States.
Governor Christie, you too have criticized the president's recent executive action on gun control, saying it's unconstitutional, another step to bypass Congress. But hasn't your own position on guns evolved, sir? The New Jersey Star Ledger reports that you signed several laws to regulate the possession of firearms and that you argued back in August 2013, and I quote, these common sense measures will strengthen New Jersey's already tough gun laws. So isn't that kind of what the president wants to do now?
No, absolutely not. The president wants to do things without working with his Congress, without working with the legislature, without getting the consent of the American people. And the fact is that that's not a democracy, that's a dictatorship. And we need to be very, very concerned about that. See, here's the thing. I don't think the founders put the Second Amendment as number 2 by accident. I don't think they dropped all the amendments into a hat and picked them out of a hat. I think they made the Second Amendment because they thought it was just that important. And fact is, in New Jersey, what we have done is to make it easier now to get a conceal and carry permit. We have made it easier to do that, not harder. And the way we've done it is properly through regulatory action, not by signing unconstitutional executive orders. This guy is a petulant child. That's what he is. I mean, you know, fact is, Neil, let's think about And I hope the president's watching tonight, because here's what I'd like to tell him. Mr. President, we're not against you, we're against your policies. When you became president, you had a Democratic Congress and a filibuster-proof Democratic Senate. You had only 21 Republican governors in this country. And now after 7 years of your policies, we have the biggest majority we've had since the 1920s in the House, a Republican majority in the Senate, and 31 out of 50 Republican governors. The American people have rejected your agenda, and now you're trying to go around it. That's not right. It's not constitutional, and we are going to kick your rear end out of the White House come this fall.
So what is the answer, Senator Cruz, to stop mass shootings and violent crime up in 30 cities across the country?
The answer is simple. You prosecute criminals. You target the bad guys. You know, a minute ago, Neil asked, what has President Obama done to illustrate that he wants to go after guns? Well, he appointed Eric Holder as Attorney General. Eric Holder said he viewed his mission as brainwashing the American people against guns. He appointed Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court, someone who has been a radical against the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. He launched Fast and Furious, illegally selling guns to Mexican drug lords that were then used to shoot law enforcement officials. And I'll tell you what Hillary Clinton has said. Hillary Clinton says she agrees with the dissenters, the Supreme Court dissenters in the Heller case. There were 4 dissenters, and they said that they believe the Second Amendment protects no individual right to keep and bear arms whatsoever, which means if their view prevailed and the next president's going to get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 Supreme Court justices, the court will rule that not a single person in this room has any right under the Second Amendment, and the government could confiscate your guns. And I'll note that California's senator, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, said if she could say to Mr. America and Mrs. America, give me your guns, I'm rounding them up, she would. And let me make a final point on this. Listen, in any Republican primary, everyone is going to say they support the Second Amendment. Unless you are clinically insane. That's what you say in a primary. But the voters are savvier than that. They recognize that people's actions don't always match their words. I've got a proven record fighting to defend the Second Amendment. There's a reason Gun Owners of America has endorsed me in this race. There's a reason the NRA gave me their Carter Knight Freedom Fund Award. And there's a reason when Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer came after our right to keep and bear arms that I led the opposition along with millions of Americans. We defeated that gun control legislation, and I would note the other individuals on this stage.
Here we go at piano round off to the hashtag Pierce to the summit. Fallon Ashley. San Francisco, California, United States. 31 watching. Shared by Jeff Goldberg.
Senator Cruz, you suggested Mr. Trump, quote, embodies New York values. Could you explain what you mean by that?
You know, I think most people know exactly what New York values are.
I am from New York.
Well, you're from New York, so you might not. But I promise you, in the state of South Carolina, they do. And listen, there are many, many wonderful, wonderful working men and women in the state of New York. But everyone understands that the values in New York City are socially liberal or pro-abortion or pro-gay marriage, focused around money and the media. And I would note, indeed, the reason I said that is I was asked, my friend Donald has taken to at his events playing Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. And I was asked what I thought of that, and I said, well, if he wanted to play a song, maybe he could play New York, New York. And you know, the concept of New York values is not that complicated to figure out. Not too many years ago, Donald did a long interview with Tim Russert. And in that interview, he explained his views on a whole host of issues that were very, very different from the views he's describing now. And his explanation, he said, look, I'm from New York. That's what we believe in New York. Those aren't Iowa values, but this is what we believe in New York. And so that was his explanation. And I guess I can frame it another way. Not a lot of conservatives come out of Manhattan. I'm just saying.
Are you sure about that?
Maria. So, conservatives actually do come out of Manhattan, including William F. Buckley and others, just so you understand. And just so, if I could, because he insulted a lot of people, I've had more calls on that statement that Ted made. New York is a great place. It's got great people. It's got loving people, wonderful people. When the World Trade Center came down, I saw something that no place on earth could have handled more beautifully, more humanely than New York. You're two 110-story buildings come crashing down. I saw them come down. Thousands of people killed. And the cleanup started the next day, and it was the most horrific cleanup probably in the history of doing this and in construction. I was down there, and I'd never seen anything like it. And the people in New York fought and fought and fought, and we saw more death and even the smell of death. Nobody understood it, and it was with us for months, the smell, the air. And we rebuilt downtown Manhattan. And everybody in the world watched, and everybody in the world loved New York and loved New Yorkers. And I have to tell you, that was a very insulting statement that Ted made.
Governor Bush, for the third time in as many months, the Iranians have provoked us, detaining us, as we've been discussing with these 10 Navy sailors. Tehran has set straight into their waters. The sailors were later released, but only after being shown on video apologizing for the incident. This occurring only weeks after Iran fired multiple rockets within 1,500 yards of a U.S. aircraft carrier and then continued to test medium-range missiles. Now, you've claimed that such actions indicate Tehran has little to fear from a President Obama. I wonder, sir, what would change if they continued doing this sort of thing under President Jeb Bush?
Well, first of all, under President Jeb Bush, we would restore the strength of the military. Last week, Secretary Carter announced that the Navy's going to be cut again. It's now half the size of what it was prior to Operation Desert Storm. The deployments are too high for the military personnel. We don't have procurement being done for refreshing the equipment. The B-52 is still operational as the long-range bomber. It was inaugurated in the age of Harry Truman. The planes are older than the pilots. We're gutting our military, and so the Iranians and the Chinese and the Russians and many other countries look at the United States not as serious as we once were. We have to eliminate the sequester, rebuild our military in a way that makes it clear that we're back in the game. Secondly, as it relates to Iran, we need to confront their ambitions across the board. We should reimpose sanctions. They've already violated sanctions after this agreement was signed by testing medium-range missiles. Thirdly, we need to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to send a serious signal that we're back in the game with Israel, and sign an agreement that makes sure that the world knows that they will have technological superiority. We need to get back in the game as it relates to our Arab nations. The rest of the world is moving away from us towards other alliances because we are weak. This president and John Kerry and Hillary Clinton all have made it harder for the next president to act, but he must act to confront the ambitions of Iran. We can get back in the game to restore order and security for our own country.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Kasich, while everyone has been focusing on Iran's provocations, I'm wondering what you make of what Saudi Arabia has been doing and its recent moves in the region, including its execution of a well-known Shiite cleric and its move to dramatically increase oil production. Some say in an effort to drive down oil prices and force a lot of U.S. oil producers out of business. Sure enough, oil prices have tumbled. One brokerage house now is predicting a third or more of American oil producers and those heavily invested in fracking will go bankrupt. And soon Saudi Arabia and OPEC will be back in the driver's seat. U.S. energy player Carl Ham recently told me, with friends like these, who needs enemies? Do you agree?
Well, let me first of all talk a little bit about my experience. I served on the Defense Committee for 18 years, and by the way, one of the members of that committee was Senator Strom Thurmond from South Carolina. Let me also tell you that after the 9/11 attacks, Secretary Rumsfeld invited me to the Pentagon with a meeting of the former Secretaries of Defense.
Here we go at Piano Roundup to the hashtag Here's the Summit. Fallon Ashley, San Francisco, California, United States, 31 watching. Shared by Jeff Goldberg.
To solve our most significant problems. So I not only had the opportunity to go through the Cold War,
features, rooftop hangout, stop broadcast, button, cameras, TCP40S/NS141/0Q0 403 video 109 out 24.2 FPS target, 24.6.
it's so critical for us to
At
be
RAM
energy
underscore com,
independent,
one
and we're
watching,
getting there
button,
because of fracking.
at RAM under, one
And
watch,
we ought to
Periscope.
explore, because see, energy independence gives us leverage and flexibility. And secondly, if you want to bring jobs back to the United States of America and industry,
Sorry guys,
low
I'm
prices
not sure if
make
the
the difference.
battery charger's kicking in or not.
And that's why we must make sure that we continue to frack. In terms of Saudi Arabia, look, my biggest problem with them is they're funding radical clerics through their madrasas. That is a bad deal and an evil situation, and presidents have looked the other way. And I was going to tell you, whether I'm president or not, we better make it clear to the Saudis that we're going to support you. We're in relation with you, just like we were in the first Gulf War. But you've got to knock off the funding and teaching of radical clerics, who are the very people who try to destroy us and will turn around and destroy them. So look, in foreign policy, it's strength, but you got to be cool. You got to have a clear vision of where you want to go. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to suggest to you here tonight that you can't do on-the-job training.
Camera selection, back camera, button,
a Soviet Union,
double tap to switch to front camera.
The issues that we saw around the world in Central America, the potential spread of communism, and 9/11, and the Gulf War. You see, with the Saudis, deliver them a strong message. But at the end of the day, we have to keep our cool, because most of the time they're going right with us, and they must be part of our coalition to destroy ISIS. And I believe we can get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. There's much more ahead, including the fight against ISIS. More from North Charleston, South Carolina, when we come right back.
This mountain don't come free. We gotta pay rent on it. Only our rent comes in blood. Get them off that mountain.
They're a family. The harder we push, the tougher they are gonna get.
We must protect this land.
When you come up that mountain, you ain't coming back down alive.
Outsiders series premiere coming soon on WGN America.
TCP40S/NS275/0Q0 275 video 202 at 24.2 FPS target, 24.0 FPS.
I felt there must be other people out there that
At RAM
are
underscore
in the
com,
same
one watching,
situations,
Periscope.
and I needed to be a voice for them.
Here we go at piano round off to the hashtag Here's to the Summit. Fallon Ashley, San Francisco, stop broadcast.
To be a better leader in the community.
Cabas,
to all those moms
stop broadcast.